All right, as promised, Curtis and I are back here today. We are in Luke chapter 6, and I really wanted to focus in on the beginning of Luke chapter 6, because I think there's some things that we don't talk about a lot in Christianity. We don't talk about what the Sabbath is and why we were asked to observe it in the Old Testament, and yet it's not a repeated command in the New Testament. And then I think there's some modern day parallels between the tradition, the written law, and yet how we as Christians are maybe sometimes supposed to break those traditions and break that written law.
Wow.
So
break the law.
I'm going to leave and I'm going to let Curtis handle this one.
Talk to us a little bit about, I think everybody, that word Sabbath, I think people sort of get that. Can you just briefly, what is the Sabbath? Why is it important to Jews? And then maybe what does it look like after Jesus' resurrection?
Yeah, I think, it goes back to creation, and we have, God created everything in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. Yeah. And so the pattern is set up for us. And I think in many ways, it's a command in the Old Testament. The God's people were commanded to take that break, to rest, to reflect, and ultimately, like all the commands, it's to glorify God.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not to be viewed as like a vacation day. It's not just so you can get your muscles to relax and you get some time for yourself, but it's ultimately to glorify God and to focus on Him. To whether that's more time in prayer or more time reflecting on what God has given us. And then we see all of the Ten Commandments are repeated in the New Testament, except the Sabbath. And we see that there's a little bit of a shift that takes place, and it starts during the life of Christ, and it really changes, I think, after the resurrection of Christ. And that Sabbath is now sort of replaced by this day of worship and fellowship together and reflecting on the Scriptures and what Christ has done for us.
Almost like as the Spirit now indwells us, like we have our Sabbath.
Yeah.
We rest in Him.
Yeah.
Let's look at this. The first one, there's really two kind of stories that he talks about. The first one is he's passing through the grain fields. His disciples were picking heads of grain, rubbing together and eating them. Essentially, they're guys out, right? And then they're just wanting a little bit of food. Like they're hungry, right. It's hot. What's the problem here and what's going on?
So the Pharisees are really, really good at making laws, right? And so they would add laws to God's laws to prevent them from breaking God's laws. Yeah. And so it's like they keep putting up barriers and barriers and barriers so that you don't break the Sabbath. And it's taking it way too far. I mean, the point where they're picking heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands and eating them. The Pharisees, that's work. That's scandalous. Yeah. How can you work? And when we were in Israel last year, like pressing the elevator button is work.
It was crazy. There was an actual Shabbat elevator.
Yeah, then it just stopped at every floor, so you didn't have to work to press the button. Yeah. As God is, again, the key of the Sabbath is to glorify God, to be able to reflect and pray. And it's like they're taking it way too far. And so Jesus, answers them and says, look, haven't you read what David and those who were with him did when he was hungry, how he entered the house of God and took and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priest to eat it. He even gave some to those who were with him. And he told them the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. And what is Jesus telling them here? Like what is he saying?
Yeah, essentially, I created the Sabbath. I can do what I want.
Yeah,
like I'm the Lord. Like I don't have to be bound by these extra things. Like, guys, get it. The Sabbath is for rest. Rest is because you're a created being. You need it, and glorify me on it. Don't make all these extra, tidbits, a thing to add on to it. That's really creates craziness almost.
Yeah. And so the culture was going one way, and Jesus is never afraid to go against the culture. And I think for me, as we see this, Jesus isn't quote unquote breaking the Sabbath for no good reason. Like I don't know how to say this. Like what are some, and we continue on in verses 6 through 11, what are some good reasons to maybe bend or break these
Yeah.
traditions.
Yeah, I think we see it on several places. It says, "Who are you know what man if he has his ox fall in the the pit if he won't help him up on the Sabbath? How much
work.
more if a person?" I think God loves mercy, loves justice. He wants us to walk humbly with our God. I think it's always the law is there not to do anything but to point us towards Christ. It's to show us that we can't actually obey. And so all these extra rules that you add on, all the more so showing that, like, dude, you can't do this. And so as we get into the next Sabbath, he says, on another Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching. A man was there whose right hand was paralyzed. The scribes and the Pharisees were watching him closely. Interesting, right? I mean, he's in this.
They're ready.
They're ready. They're gonna pounce. Have you ever been like teaching a sermon and something, and you can almost feel like someone's like, just trying. Yeah, please don't do that. It's really hard to preach that way. But the scribes and the Pharisees watching him closely, see if he would heal on the Sabbath, so that they could find a charge against him.
It's amazing that the bad thing here is healing somebody's shriveled hand.
Yeah. But it says he knew their thoughts. And so what does he do?
Get up, stand here, and he just tells him to stretch out his hand.
Yep. Jesus said to him, I ask you, love this, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do what is good or to do what is evil, to save life or destroy it? After looking around at them all, he said, stretch out his hand.
Yeah.
So he kind of sets them up almost, right? I mean, he says, look, is it right to do good or is it right to do bad on the Sabbath? Well, the answer to that is obviously to do good.
Right.
I mean, you can't do bad. Like, you never should do bad. But he sets it up and saying, like, guys, look, doing good is always right. It doesn't matter the time or the day or the place. Do what's right.
Yeah. And I think, for us as believers, as we have our traditions, as we have,
because we have them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's times where we're like, I really don't want to break those traditions, or I don't want to upset the culture around me. Like, we have to make that faith-based decision of, is it lawful to do good or to do bad?
Yeah.
And how we go about this, it's not always black and white.
Right.
And it takes wisdom and it takes growth and maturity, but it's something that we as Christians, we need to wrestle with.
Yeah. There's a passage in James that says, he who knows what is right and doesn't do it, to him it is sin.
Yeah.
Always do good.
Yep.
When you know what to do it.
There you go. That's our charge today. So when you know what to do it. Do good. And thank you so much for tuning in today. And we look forward to continuing these with you. God bless.